We are live. Welcome to my video on the 1963 movie, The Servant. And we're gonna start with a review with absolutely no spoilers, and then get into what I call the thoughts section, where I spoil everything about the movie, but I will verbally warn before I get into any kind of spoilers. And, yeah. Happy Pride. This one, it's not like explicitly gay, but there is definitely, I just realized, hold on one second. Okay, so I talked spoilers. Yeah. Okay, so the movie is unrated. This video will be rated PG-13. Yes. So, the movie is not explicitly gay. It does not directly come out and, but it was made in 1963 in England, so it really couldn't have been, and I'm not the first person to read it as very, very gay in its subtext. So that's part of what we're exploring here, and the primary reason that I chose to do this this particular month. I am not an expert on the film or the people who made it. I'm not 100% sure I've seen other... I would look it up, but my wrists are absolutely killing me. I'm not 100% sure if I've seen other stuff by the people who made this on or off screen. But yeah, I read that this was, a significant film, and so I got it, and yeah. Did I already mention, I absolutely love this film. I think I will start with before I go further, I will make a brief disclaimer. So, this movie, this video, I'm gonna be saying some things that if you don't know the following, you might take the wrong way. So I want to make clear this video is not intending to insult anyone who isn't conservative and or like upper class or otherwise powerful. When I say things in this video about the like working class, for example, and gay people, women, various things, I'm talking about the characters and the way that this movie handles those various things. I have nothing but respect for the working class. I myself, I guess I'm somewhere between working class and middle class, and yeah, I am not fond of the upper class, and neither is this movie. But I think that might just about... Yeah, I guess I should say, I myself am not a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, henceforth LGBT, not because I'm trying to exclude any member of the community, but because LGBT rolls off the tongue easier than the full thing. I am aware that there are other allies who use the Q word, and I am not I'm currently not comfortable doing so. I'm not saying that they're wrong for doing it. That is between them and members of the community. I am not going to get into that at all. It doesn't bother me to hear when I know someone is an ally that they say it, but currently I'm not comfortable with using it myself. Maybe that'll change at some point in the future. I think that does pretty well. Oh, right. I think I might also, some of what I say, I am not trying to put down alcoholics either. So that's also something to keep in mind. Yeah, I think that is it for the disclaimers. So, I guess I will say I'd like to see more by the people who made this. They're all tremendously talented. Now, let's start with the writing. So, this... I guess I will just briefly address the fact that, as others have noted, this does not have the most complex female characters. And that is, it's the kind of thing that I would most of the time be frustrated by. I've heard someone argue, and I think it was a film historian doing an analysis on this movie, arguing, it is a story about men, and it is like, it is not always the case. It varies tremendously, but it is not always the case that women play the largest role in, when it comes to relationships between gay men. The women might end up, at most they might be like friends. I mean, obviously they're not going to be romantic if the men are gay. It's not going to be a romantic relationship. And to be clear, I'm also not going to engage in any bi erasure. I appreciate that at least one of the characters here would appear to be bi. I'm not going to give away exactly which or if it's more than one. But certainly it is a movie that is very focused. And that's, again, they had to... The thing is, if there was no romantic tension between any of the men and any of the women, censors would have been like, this sounds like some gay, stuff. This is... We can't let this stand. We might have to put someone in prison, even if that person helped end World War II. And, yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of when movies don't let women be complex, but I do appreciate this is not a movie that is, it is about the gay men and I guess let's see. These subtextually gay men. And, I think a strong case could be made that the fact that the women are not super complex here reflects that it is a story of subtextually gay men. Yeah, and the women do, the actresses do fantastic. Yes, during different parts of this, on this, I want to say, this is at least my third viewing. I forget if I've watched it more times than that. In preparation for this video, I tried to really, I made sure to pay the closest attention of any of the viewings, even more so than my first viewing. And, yeah, I definitely did notice, there's some DNA in common between this and a couple of other things. So, much like American Psycho, this has powerful people having meaningless conversations and not really doing anything. Like, it's like, what do you need to work? Do you feel any inclination towards actually getting off your ass and doing anything at all? Like, just, yeah. And I was also reminded of the Menu, the Anya Taylor-Joy Nicholas Hoult, Ralph Fiennes film, with these, like, powerful people trying and not always succeeding at throwing their weight around, like, do you know who I am? Kind of thing. So, yeah, I think it's kind of telling that rich, powerful people have not changed that much in 60 years, because the Menu, yeah, let's see. I forget if it was 2023, but it was recent. It was not that many years ago that movie came out. It might have been 22, whatever, just, yeah. There is a lot going on in this movie. Right, for those who are entirely unfamiliar with it. So basically, we follow the I'm gonna try to get the names right. So yeah, Barrett, Hugo, I stay, perhaps related to Majel, becomes the titular servant to the master of the house, Tony Masters. And there is the power relationship will change over the course of it. And that's not a spoiler. You can tell from right away that something is going to be, this is not going to just be 100% straightforward, master and servant relationship. And this is a good time to note, again, quoting from I want to say he was a film historian. In 1963, a lot of people hadn't even seen a servant. That was basically something that was very much on the way out, and yeah, it's not an accident that it is specifically that. Right, I suppose this is also a perfectly fine time to say, so yeah, the director, I believe it was, had to leave America because frickin' McCarthyism. And so he made this movie in England, and then they say, see, he's a communist. Look at this movie he made. And the film historian argues that it's not really, like, Barrett does not represent, like, someone who, like, a regular person trying to usurp, who might or might not usurp power. But yeah, it is like I guess, should I think that's as much as I'm gonna say about it, about that here. Let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of psychological complexity going on with the two men. And yeah, the characterization is deeply compelling. This is very much like, it's not a movie for everyone. The moment I said the year it came out, I'm sure a lot of people clicked off if you didn't notice the year that I put in the description box. But it is definitely, it's about the way that the relationship changes over the course of the film between these two men and multiple other characters. And yeah, it's, there is like talking, there are these little looks. I mean, I already mentioned that Tony does not do very much. He kind of just sits at home. And Barrett has to do all this stuff for him. And if that is not appealing to you, then the movie doesn't really have anything that would interest you. But, I think even if you're not that interested in the themes, just the acting, But yeah, if you don't want to watch something with people talking a lot, I respect that. Yeah. Moving on. Something that you'll notice almost immediately is that Tony is almost like a child. And that is, of course, the case with a lot of powerful people. Right now, we're seeing Trump and Musk, acting like children. Like, they've been acting like children for decades now. But, like, this is some of the most, like, I'm taking my ball and going home. Screw you guys, I'm going home. You know, just petulant children. And, you know, Tony is not the most, like, unbearable of the of powerful man children, but he is, you know, it's definitely an element that's there. And the he is essentially helpless without the help. You know, if there is not someone there, and this is, again, you see this immediately, like right at the start, it's established. He can't really do very much himself, or at least he isn't willing to. And I don't know exactly who came up with it, but somebody during the making of this decided to give him an oral fixation, which I thought was just a wonderful choice. He is very frequently smoking, and you know, I know what you're going to say. Oh, he's a smoker. Notice when he smokes, and especially, you know, when he's upset about something, he needs something in his mouth. A cigarette, cigar, something, maybe a drink, maybe both. And like, it's such a clear, like, basically, yeah, he wants a pacifier, you know, baby wants Packy. And it's, yeah, fantastic decision. Just, yeah. That might just about be. The dialogue is also fantastic. That is where some of the subtext is. You know, like, as soon as someone opens their mouth, prepare yourself to be dazzled by the acting and some very, very effective subtextual writing. There are a number of lines that are very, yeah, yeah. Just, I'll talk about some of them in the spoiler section, but I refuse to give them away for people who haven't watched. The direction really nails, like, it's a very delicate thing here, because what it has to accomplish is make clear Tony's place, you know, is somewhat expensive, you know, and he wields a lot of power. He has a lot of money. But the place also needs to, you know, it needs to be clear that if Barrett is not taking care of it, you know, like, at the very start, we see Barrett be hired, you know. We see what it looks like before someone has started taking care of this place. And yeah, like, it's just a mess, you know. There's yeah, it has to, it's important that Tony comes across as someone who believes that, you know, he is, like, he has a very strong sense of entitlement. He feels like he's owed all this stuff, you know. And Barrett, you know, I mentioned the power, you know, that the relationship will change over the course of it, but we have to believe that, you know, Barrett would come across as credible as the servant, you know. Yeah, just fantastic. And the performance, I'll talk more about the performances, but just, yeah. This is one of those cases where the director really, everything that he does, each department was given very clear direction and lived up to the yeah. It was not easy to make all this work, but yeah, everyone understood their assignments. the cinematography, the use of lighting and shadow. There's a silhouette shot. Breathtaking. And there are a not insignificant number of mirror shots, taking advantage of the fact that under the right circumstances, a mirror will warp rather than 100% mimic. And yeah, just I am in awe of the mirror shots in this movie. I mean, even just the fact that they managed to accomplish them without the mirror catching the camera. And a non-zero number of these shots have camera movement, so they must have planned it out very carefully. And yeah, you know, it does, like I mentioned, the warping, you know, everything is never as it seems. Is that the lyric? Something like that. This is also one of those cases where I know some people don't like black and white, and, you know, that's fine. I think you're missing out on a lot of classics, but this is a case where I'm really glad it's black and white. It's just really the starkness that is difficult to get in color, and some of the contrasts are just chef's kiss. The editing is also really great. There are times where a scene will cut in a way that it will either linger or it will cut very abruptly. And yeah, thus, you know, making it clear, you know, like, because an abrupt cut can communicate that nothing more happened there. Whereas a lingering shot might say, you know, you sure about this? This is how you want to leave things with this other person? Okay, I mean, I don't know if this is the best idea. And the music also, at times, it can be romantic. You know, I already mentioned there are romantic relationships in this. And then at times, it has this kind of tense vibe to it that just, yeah. The acting, like, everyone does just, like, delivers exactly what they should. I'll just briefly talk, you know, so the women, you know, I already mentioned they don't get to be complex, sadly, which, like, in real life, obviously women are as complex as men. And, you know, we gotta normalize complex depictions of women. I already mentioned why it doesn't ruin this movie for me. The women are essentially archetypes, you know, these ideas that men have of what certain women are like. And for that, the women really do absolutely nail it. Like, every step of the way, I completely believed that they were these, you know, yeah. And just, I can't go too much into detail, but I will just say, yeah, the you know, the male actors also, just phenomenal. Like, you can tell the way that Tony is trying to put on, you know, he wants people to think of him as more than he deep down knows he is. You know, just the way that he talks to Barrett the very first time, and then, you know, not very long after, he starts to soften up. And Barrett, like, there is, again, like, there's what he presents, and then, every so often, even early on, we get these hints. There's something more there. I think that will do it for the acting. So, yeah, the pacing, it is in some ways a slow burn. And, I can appreciate, some people would say it needed to be faster, maybe shorter, maybe needed to go bigger here or there. I disagree. But again, it is very much, and it's very much also, it's extremely important you watch this in its proper context. If you watch this expecting a movie made today, 62 years after it was actually made, yeah, that's not going to happen. And yeah, the set design, I already mentioned some of the stuff that has to be accomplished. There are just, yeah, I am deeply impressed by the set design. They did such a phenomenal job, because there are times where the set, this house, we spend a good amount of this movie in the house, and yeah, like, there are definitely times where it reflects the condition of Tony. Again, without losing the fact, it does still look like, okay, this place must have cost, a decent amount. Now, I already mentioned that there's a bunch of smoking and drinking in this, and I definitely think that they use it really well. Like, it's one of those things where, I already mentioned it for Tony himself, but in general, make note of when and who, for example, smokes a cigarette, and what they look like. Do they look like they're just exhausted, just using the cigarette to just gotta get through this, or do they light up in celebration of something, in some sort of, yeah. And while it couldn't really show it in detail because of when it came out, there, yeah, I mentioned, romantic relationships in this, so yeah, there is at least one scene where someone is either about to or does actually have sex. And I love that each time, I'm not mentioning how many, each time, it could mean just the one, it communicates something. It means something. This is not, this is, well, I hesitate to say before, because I feel like there were some movies around this time, just maybe not English American ones. Anyway, American movies, certainly later, the 80s were definitely a big decade for this, would sometimes show sexuality just to titillate, just to, yeah. But yeah, this was one of those where, and I respect that. I just think it's too bad. I've seen so many people, think that sex scenes are just there to titillate, so they'll complain about, awkward sex scenes in Black Swan, which, like, way to miss the point. Like, yeah, they're supposed to be awkward. They're not supposed to be appealing, because the character or characters involved are awkward about sex. It's specifically, purposefully trying to get, yeah. So that I wish that was not the case. And yeah, I think from now on, ideally, sex scenes should communicate something. You know, that was something I really appreciated about Jessica Jones, and really in general, I forget if it's all, of the Marvel Netflix Marvel, I can never remember which is the right one, so I say both, so that at least one of them is the wrong one. Yeah, the sex scenes communicate something, you know, about the characters involved, about the relationship, and various, yeah. Yeah, I think that might cover the, so the, yeah, I rate this, the movie didn't make me irate, but I rate the movie 8 power dynamics on, you know, uneven ground out of 10. And that means that we are ready to get into the thoughts section. So from here on out, spoilers for absolutely everything in the movie. This is your final warning. If you persist in watching this video, I'm going to assume you've watched the movie. And I forgot I put it, there we go, yes. So, the servant, Mr. Barrett, comes right out of the Thomas crapper. See, if Tony hadn't had known that, maybe he would have known how dangerous this would be. And if there wasn't that smell he admits of wet rot, maybe the stink of toilets would have been more clear to him. We can tell from the moment that Barrett reaches the house, Tony needs the servant way more than, you know, Barrett needs, you know, this job. You know, the door is not locked, so anyone could walk in. There's hardly any furniture. It's dirty. We're told not long after about the smell of wet rot. The guy's asleep and confused, like, yeah, dude, it's 3 o'clock. That's why he's there. He didn't show up super early or super late. That would be weird. Like, you're part of the upper class. Do you not understand how this works yet? And, you know, there's these little things in the interview that are very effective. Like the thing about how Tony doesn't like the guy of some woman following him around. You know, it could be interpreted as he's a bachelor. He's comfortable in this more careless lifestyle. Or you could read it as him being gay. And the thing about how he needs, you know, Barrett to cook. And after being told, you know, my soufflés have always gotten me compliments, Tony asks, well, can you make Indian food? Which also immediately tells us, as is confirmed in the restaurant, you know, yeah, I forget if it's is it a restaurant, whatever. The you know, when he's talking to Miss Stewart, he's pretty comfortable with colonialism. Like, he doesn't think, you know, if he really badly wants someone to make him Indian food, here's a thought. Hire an Indian immigrant, like actually get someone from that culture instead of asking some white guy who's just told you that's really not his specialty to do it because you like that kind of food. Like, you know, he likes the food enough to want to eat it, but not the people enough to want to pay one of them to make it for him. He'd rather have substandard Indian food than pay an actual Indian. And I mean, it's no wonder he loves the food. It's amazing. You know, if you've never had it, like, you know, obviously prepare yourself for, you know, if you're white like me, spicy, you know. But yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And yeah, you know, when he's talking about what they're going to do, you know, like kill a bunch of nature and then make a city that it kind of sounds like the locals didn't ask for, or certainly I can imagine they didn't want, you know, some white British guys coming over and doing it. You know, it's like we white guys have a history of screwing things up when we go into other countries and try to do things for them instead of just, you know, yeah, like they should lead, and then, you know, if they need our help, we, you know, help them, obviously. Now, let's see, yeah, you know, he even admits we're gonna have to find some people to live in the buildings we make. So you're not meeting a need, you're creating a problem and then trying to code it over. And he's also rude to the wait staff. Like, he practically comes out and says, "Can I get a clean glass? This one's dirty." And, you know, first he says he wants a different wine. This one is corked. I like to remark, "You're corked." And then when they basically immediately provide a different wine, he's just like, "Yeah, whatever, fine. It's good. Just shut up. Leave me alone." So he's very comfortable having all this power. And that's, of course, something we're going to see change over. You know, he's not going to have all this power for the entire movie. Very nice bit of setup here at the very start. I know for a fact that I've watched way too many murder mysteries, because the moment that I heard the words, "Oh yeah, those two rich guys died within a week of each other," I'm immediately thinking, oh, is the servant like a serial killer taking out rich people and, you know, Tony's the new target or something? You know, I mean, it's a very clever cover. He worked for someone who's now dead and knew the father of Tony, so, you know, he was able to worm his way in, you know. I'm joking, obviously, that's not, you know, by the end of the movie, it's completely clear. No, that's not at all what happened. You know, I don't know if Barrett was always going to do this and he was just waiting for the right time, the right target or something, or, you know, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he met Tony and he was like, "What a train wreck," and something just like snapped or something, and then he started doing all the stuff that he does. Let's see, and then we have. There we go. Yeah. But yeah, you know, he, you know, he knew the father of Tony, and Tony's not going to be able to get any information about Barrett from the old master. He'd have to go way back. He said, you know, "Oh, for years I worked for this guy." And, you know, his own father is also dead. But yeah, seriously though, yeah, that's how this contact was made. They used to have people in common. And, you know, it's also making him look very dedicated. He worked for this guy right up until the guy croaked. He didn't get fired or leave his job prematurely for some other reason. But yeah, you know, think about how, like, yeah, that's, you know, for so many of these people, this was just their life. You know, they'd worked for one of these rich people until that person died, and then they have to go on to some other. You know, sometimes this young, like, this kid who can't do anything for himself. You know, I mean, the fact that he was asleep, you know, he drank so much so early in the day, which also, you know, again, I'm not trying to disparage alcoholics, and I'm not 100% sure if he's supposed to be, I don't think he's supposed to be an outright alcoholic. Certainly if he is, I mean, he is basically high functioning, although that could also be that maybe at the time they weren't willing to show a complete, you know, just, yeah, wreck. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he's asleep so early in the day, you know, on the one hand, you have, like, it's certainly making him look helpless, you know. And the fact that he had so much to drink that he fell asleep, you know, that is something that can happen, you know. But yeah, it shows he is not really good at, like, if you have an appointment, you know, maybe that's the day you choose not to get really drunk early in the day, you know, just like, because you don't have to, it's not your job or something, you know. And it is also, you know, again, the way that he is like a child. You know, that's the kind of thing that a small child, you know, it's nap time. And I also quite like that the servant has to be asked to take a seat twice during the interview, and Tony actually walks around a little bit, including standing behind Barrett's back. Like he's trying to assert dominance, perhaps embarrassed by having fallen asleep at 3 in the afternoon because he had too many beers at lunch. And he doesn't really like people he considers, to be beneath him. He wants to keep them beneath him. He doesn't want to be eye level with Barrett too much at this point. And, later they do, come to, let's see, over the course of it changes, and he does, once he feels he can trust Barrett, he does start to let his guard down. But, for now, he wants to keep him beneath him by standing behind him. Behind and beneath do both start with the letter B and E. And, of course, the importance of the second letter of the alphabet was underlined by the Beatles. Whisper words of wisdom, letter B. I quite like that she chuckles, there we go, at the idea of him having a manservant. But does also, she's underlining, young people at the time hadn't really, that's really still, like, isn't that the kind of thing your grandfather would have, just, please call him Tony. The manservant owner is his grandfather. And but yeah, she does also pretty quickly start viewing Barrett as something the two of them order around. She doesn't act like there could so easily have been a version of this where, when Barrett comes up and is like serving them wine and this stuff, she's like, this is making me really uncomfortable. This is awkward. Can you take a seat and just eat with us, please? Like you're a person, But yeah, I mean, she also somewhat likes this, upper class kind of stuff. It's just the dated nature of it that is so again, we're wonderfully, we're seeing that even people who acknowledge how weird it is for someone in 1963 to have a servant, a gentleman's gentleman, if they're upper class, they're still going to order that servant around. And let's see. Yeah, the subtle little ways that Barrett exerts some influence, such as influencing the colors for the paint job, which, let's see, I have to say it is a relief that they don't really paint all the walls white. That would be a little too meta for a black and white film. And when she comes home with him and Barrett is there, you have little details like the fact that he offers to take her coat and she says she'll keep it on. And within like a minute or two, she is taking it off herself and placing it on the furniture rather than, having him handle it. Or just taking it off herself, she's very uncomfortable about it. And there's also this thing that she doesn't really want to go along with Barrett, but she does it in a way that's kind of rude. Again, she could just say, like, please just sit with us, you're a person. And let's see. And yeah, the discomfort that she feels, the point where she's going against this upper class educated thing, the thing about the drink with the two of them not making eye contact when she places her order, the fact that he ignores at least one thing she says, and she doesn't know, he uses this fancy word, and, and he doesn't stop and, like, explain it to her or something, which I also appreciate. That could be seen as, like, kind of insulting, patronizing or something, but the little look he gives, like he's like, pearls before swine. And let's see, Yeah. I also definitely think that when Barrett brings the healthy lunch of green salad and is then asked to bring in a beer, his face is not saying that he was just about to. As his lips say, his face is saying, "You're seriously going to drink this early in the day? You haven't lifted a finger. Other people are working and you're just casually making decisions. Sure, fine. I'll get you a beer." Also, the thing about when it's cold out and Barrett makes sure he has a hot foot bath. I think that's what those things are called. And, Tony outright compares Barrett to a nanny. Like, there is some level of discomfort he feels with Barrett doing all these things for him, going above and beyond. And, yeah, if at the same time, he does need it. But if he says that he needs it, then Barrett kind of has the power in the situation, so he'll just like, "Oh, you silly. I don't need a nanny." And let's see, Barrett opens the door, let's see, I don't think he did knock, or at the very least he didn't wait for a response for them. So, yeah. Um, she's very embarrassed and starts saying, couldn't he live out? Does he have to have the freedom of not being confined to quarters this late in the evening? One can understand where she's coming from, the frustration of this situation, but it is also fairly dehumanizing to Barrett. And it is noteworthy, Tony keeps defending Barrett, saying he just made a mistake, when of course in reality there is some truth to what she's saying, at least about knocking. And it was also a great detail that after he serves both of them, we see him in the kitchen smoking, very casual, and he looks at the gloves with disdain, or stain remover for you Yanks. And yeah, I mean, there is this thing of like, he's like, I can't believe I have to play this game. I can't believe they're buying it, and yeah, the way he smokes, he doesn't look exhausted. He looks like they're buying it. Got him right where I want him. It's working out so wonderfully, just and yeah, some of the time when Tony is smoking, yeah, it's the oral fixation. It's like, I want something to make me feel comfortable again, He does not take it well when things don't go exactly his way. He's very spoiled. And let's see, then we have there we go. Yeah. The thing about the project still being in the very early stages, and Tony says something along the lines of, "I could live like this for months." And I'm like, live like what? You do nothing. You're saying that you'd like a vacation for several months where you don't have to have any kind of responsibilities and can just order your manservant around and be with your fiance. Yeah, I bet you would. That's just, yeah. See, this is why rich people are rich. They just have so much drive and ambition, and they hate the idea of not doing anything. We already know the guy was born into wealth. His father was rich too. We found that out in the first conversation between him and Barrett. He's never had to take care of himself or worry about money. And there are countless rich people in the real world who are this, just like, yeah, they do just want to lounge about and just spend a lot of money that they have because of wage theft and other exploitation, just, yeah, I really appreciate the honesty in media like this, and again, American Psycho. Let's see. I think that covers what I wanted to say there. So moving on. I adore the shot where we see these warped reflections of the three characters, and shortly after Barrett says, they're going by the classics, and she disagrees, says this is prehistoric. And again, we see Tony on Barrett's side. Or the painting's side. Rather than her opinion against it. He does indeed not like the idea of a woman around disagreeing with him. And, yeah. disagreeing with him and another man. Like, he's known her for substantially longer than Barrett. I mean, one would have to think if they're engaged and Barrett hasn't been working for him for that long, but that's misogyny for you, you know, bigotry, brain rot. If she says something, that he disagrees with, it must be wrong, including when she's obviously right, like, again, the knocking. And yeah, she makes a snide comment to Barrett right before leaving, refusing to be driven home or walked home. And the moment she's out the door, Tony does berate Barrett. That almost rhymes. Who insists he did knock, as if knocking without waiting for a response is not still considered rude. And I'm not talking about like servants. I don't think anybody should have servants. I mean in general, like, I don't enter someone's place before hearing an answer from knocking or a doorbell or that sort of thing, depending on if I'm already inside the place or not, obviously. Not going to go out and ring the doorbell once I'm already inside. But if I'm unsure if someone inside is, yeah. If they don't answer when you knock louder or possibly just wait, like, it's not like there was a fire. He doesn't burst in and say, we have to get out of the building or we're all gonna die. No, he's like, here are your drinks, like, I mean, considering that yeah. Let's see, I think that does, and I do think it is also noteworthy, like, Tony was just so comfortable with Barrett around that he, like, I'm sorry, if I'm, if there's some sort of romantic situation between me and my partner, and there's someone else, nearby, I'm going to make sure that person knows, hey, do not disturb, if the room is a rockin', well, that's an earthquake. If the van is a rockin', don't come a knockin'. It just, yeah. Tony maybe doesn't care about her discomfort, maybe is just, like, because that's also a thing that could be read as gay. No, sure, Barrett, come right in. Yeah, we're just about to bone. You want to watch? You want to participate? It's like, yeah, speaking as a straight man, I do not want another man around when I am getting amorous. Now, let's see. I mean, to be clear, I'm not trying to kink shame anyone. If you're engaged in some kind of cuck fantasy, yeah, that's between you and them, 100%. I think that does bring us to let's see. Yeah, the bit with him being ill, the movement of the flowers. She points out, every time you open a door in this building, he's right outside, He always finds himself needed right outside. Just, it's yeah, like, it is uncomfortable. There is clearly something going on there. And it's this wonderful thing of, like, yeah, but, Tony needs help. Like, clearly there is some, and Barrett is always doing something. He's never just, like, standing around. Well, early in the film, later in the film, he does. But yeah, so Tony thinks, no, he's doing his work. That's what he's supposed. I'm paying him to do this stuff, aren't I? But yeah, he is always very close by, and that is the thing, when you have someone working for you in that kind of capacity, yeah, they do kind of have access to most rooms. So if they're doing something in the room that's right next to where you are, yeah, it's like, what? It's what I'm supposed to do, remember? So it's a very nice bit of, yeah. Let's see, but yeah. Let's see. It's such a great, the thing with, he starts. Oh, right. I have never mind. I'm gonna do this other bit first. Yeah. So yeah, as she's leaving, he makes a comment about it's not looking good, which of course immediately she thinks he's talking about Tony's health, but he claims, oh, I mean the weather. Which, if that really was it, he could have just said, the weather is not looking good, you know? Like, clearly he is trying to upset her. Because he knows Tony already sides with Barrett. So if she shows up and is like, I can't believe what Barrett just said to me, you have to fire him, Tony's going to be like, well, what is it now? You know, like, so just, yeah. Because, you know, there's definitely some misogyny going on there. And to be clear, that by itself, you know, I know some people think that, like, oh, all gay men are extremely misogynistic. I mean, there are some, sure. I forget the percentages. I believe someone did do, like, a study of, well, who's more misogynistic? Is it gay men or straight men? From what I recall, it was straight men who were more. Don't take my word for that. Just even if that is not the case, there is a lot of misogyny in a lot of straight men, and keep in mind, like, a lot of the time, if a gay man is misogynistic, it's because he's being forced into romantic relationships with women when that's not what he wants. Whilst, you know, misogynistic straight men, it's like, well, you're attracted to women. A lot of misogynistic men want a woman in the home to do, you know, domestic chores, but you still hate them. Like, your problem is not with women. Your problem is with patriarchy, with capitalism. You know, these are the systems that are making our lives harder. It's not women. It's not feminism. Now, let's see. I think that does bring us to... Yeah. Then after, you know, oh, it's not looking good, you know, then Barrett makes comments to Tony about, you know, she doesn't show up so much anymore. That's weird. I mean, here you are, bedridden and sick, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's not my place to say, but I just feel like if she cared about you, she'd come by more? I don't know. I mean, do you think she has another man already? Is that... Nah, probably not, right? But maybe. And, you know, he says, you know, oh, I had to move this impractical thing that she got. And, yeah, I really love when she's like, you know, he starts picking up the flowers to move, and she's like, put those down. And she doesn't even look directly at him. She knows what he's doing. You know, like, peripheral vision, and just also, like, you know, intuition is like, he's doing it again, isn't he? He just, every single second, you know, and again, like, he's saying, oh, but, you know, it's not good for you. It's, you're sick. You shouldn't have, you know. So I have no idea if there's any accuracy to the statement, but it feels like he's, like, trying to keep positive things about Miss Stewart away from Tony. And let's see, then we have... Yeah. Great scene at the restaurant. We never do find out exactly what was the deal with the two women, just that one of them thinks the other has had something whispered to her. The other insists that there wasn't. You know, there is definitely a theme of people spying on each other, or seeming to. I'm not 100% sure if they are upper class, though. So it is possible that the movie's also, you know, because it is, again, it's a fairly meaningless conversation. I suppose, no, it's not as meaningless as the ones the upper class characters have, but yeah. And yeah, we have the thing with the two Christians where the bishop outright says hell casually, and they talk about how they drink so much at these get-togethers, they have to be carried. You know, is he really gonna show up to that? Oh, of course, he'd never miss it. Last time he had to be carried out. Who didn't? And the bishop asks, where are you scurrying off to? Yeah. Yeah, sure. You're not scurrying off anywhere. Right. You know, again, we have, that, like, power dynamics is all over this. When, like, nearly every time you have two characters interacting, there's some kind of power dynamic. You know, they're not every single time, like not, you know, there's that time where he's like at a place and, you know, the guy asks, you want your bill? And he's like, oh, I didn't eat anything. You know, there's nothing power dynamic going on there. But yeah, a lot of the time, you know, I already mentioned the brief interaction he has with the waiter about the corked wine. And yeah, you know, just all these different little things, you know, people insisting that someone else has, you know, the two women, you know, one of them saying, what did she whisper to you? And the other one being like, would you just let it go? Leave me alone, you know? And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's possible that it is super important, but I can't help but notice, you know, yet another case of characters in this film trying to exert influence over others in some way, saying, you have to do this and you have to do it now. You know, I think that pretty well covers. So Tony insists that, you know, her dislike of Barrett is questioning his judgment because he can't quite admit how much he cares about Barrett. Again, it seems like at least some of the way he cares more about Barrett than her, which might be gayness. And let's see. It's possible that it's not. But yeah, the bit with calling his sister. Sure, sister. You know, I appreciate that the young women outside were being a little rude and annoying to him, but he really escalates it, going nuclear when he leaves. And you know, that's one of the first times we see just how harsh he can get. You know, that's not very upper class of you, Barrett. And yeah, we can tell from right away, Vera is definitely not like upper class. You know, she's snacking in the car over, and the conversation about, are you being a good girl? That does not sound like brother sister. You know, we can tell something more is going on. I suppose it's possible to read it as incestuous, but the movie does later, like by the end of the film, I think there is absolutely no doubt they are together. It's not, yeah, and not siblings, you know. Let's see. You know, they're not from Norfolk, I want to say it is. It's been a little while since I watched that Jimmy Carr bit. But yeah. Let's see. I think. Yeah, you know, the movie cannot openly discuss homosexuality since it was illegal in Britain at the time. Incest was also illegal, so later when there's that line, well, you know that's a crime, it can be read as gay, even though the character literally is referring to incest, which he thinks is going on at the time. And we know, you know, we find out, it's confirmed shortly after that definitely isn't the case. So we have the line, you know, a crime has been committed here. And, you know, Barrett insisting, no, I haven't committed any crime, which, you know, you could also argue is him saying, I didn't have sex with you, though. And let's see, I think... But yeah, you know, we can tell from right away, Vera is not used to this sort of life. And, you know, it's Barrett bringing in his partner to further extend his power and control over Tony. And also, you know, just be able to spend more time with her. It's especially telling when Vera sees Tony's bathroom and, like, giggles. You know, not exactly the kind of thing you would expect from someone who sees this all the time. And not long after, we see Tony taking his frustration out on Barrett, basically because Miss Stewart criticized Barrett at the lunch. Like, Barrett hasn't done anything since Tony talked to him about the knocking, but he's rich and he's upset, so he's going to take it out on someone who has less power than him. And the cigar and brandy are practically like a pacifier. He puts something in his mouth, you know, to comfort himself. And, you know, at one point he inhales and before smoke, and before exhaling he starts drinking brandy. He's gonna kill his palate, though I suppose his palate will die happy. And Vera is smoking in the kitchen. She lights up a cigarette, and Barrett performs something I don't think is completely innocent. I mean, we already knew he's great with his mouth. He is a cunning linguist, an orator of immense skill. His performance is impeccable. And then Vera is the one to bring breakfast in bed. We see she actually at first was accidentally going to put the tray down the wrong way. You know, like that's the kind of thing where if you don't know what you're doing, you have a 50-50 shot. So she might have decent luck at best. Or it's possible that she actually does know, since clearly some of this is planned. They're, again, seeing how far they can push it. You know, like, the it's the kind of thing that you could, like, you might not get fired over just that, but it would be, like, noticed and be like, I can't believe this. You know, you're going to have a conversation with the person here. And yeah, you know, by this point, they can push it very far, very hard without Tony really pushing back. And it is, of course, this thing of the power balance. The rich need those who work for them way more. Like, essentially, those who work for the rich just need job security, and that's not always something the rich provide. And, you know, yeah, there are situations where you have much better job security and don't have to deal with frickin' rich people. A lot of rich people are completely helpless infants without people taking care of them. It's also great when Tony and Miss Stewart talk to the two old rich people, and Miss Stewart is constantly interjecting. She seems genuinely bored by the situation, so she's just having fun. And they have this wonderfully pointless argument over whether a poncho is a South American cowboy or if it refers to the cloak. I mean, I think those are called poncho, like with an N instead of an M. It's possible it's the other way around. Anyway, yeah, they really are just saying words because they don't need to really make sense. They're too wealthy for anyone to do anything if they spend a lot of time and effort accomplishing nothing. Like, imagine if Barrett and Vera let the tea get cold because they were arguing over the definitions of certain words. You know, it's like, I mean, once he's explained that when he says poncho, he's referring to the South American cowboys. Also a great, you know, that's what they were called in my day. You know, it's such a great, like it's possible that he's wrong, and it's because he's outdated. You know, a lot of these rich people, and I do appreciate a lot of, you know, once you get past a certain age, and I do, you know, I'm not anti-boomer. I'm a big fan of, I want to say it was That Dang Dad who suggested we should stop saying okay boomer and start saying okay capitalist, because it really is the capitalists. You know, the capitalists of the boomer generation, you know, have screwed over future generations, but it's not all boomers. You know, hashtag not all boomers. But yeah, you know, there is a thing about once you get to a certain age, you stop really keeping up with things, you know, and yeah, when it's rich people, they are especially likely to not keep up with things and almost get like annoyed at like the. I mean, yeah, things change, you know. That's how time works. But yeah, you know, once he said, I believe poncho refers to a South American cowboy, you know, she could just say, oh, okay, right, the ponchos. So you were saying, you know, we'll need you believe you will need the help of the ponchos, you know, but instead they're just going on about, yeah, just there's also a very clear sexual undertone to when she brings him breakfast in bed. He's half naked, he's already in bed, and I couldn't help but notice he managed to get his, well, not shirt off, that was already the case, but he uncovered his, like, because he wakes up and the covers go up to like his neck, and then he sees, oh, there's a woman here. I mean, I'm not saying that my physique is impeccable, it's just, you know, you could take a look. And, you know, then she gets up close to him. Yeah. And then not long after, Barrett asks if they could take a day and a half off because their mother is sick and it's touch and go. And Tony's like, but I like hot food. Like, they're not even talking about, oh, but, you know, you might have to either prepare your own food or maybe go hungry for, you know, some hours or something. No. They're going to make sure there's cold food. But he likes hot food, so no, you may not visit your dying mother. You know, just like, so selfish. I'm sorry, but I'm willing to forego hot food if, like, someone I care about needs to visit their dying. Like, okay, that might have come out wrong. In general, I think you should be allowed to visit someone who's in hospital. You know, that's like, yeah, I'm sorry, somebody else is going to have to cover for it, and that might suck for them. I'm sorry, that's just, you should be able to visit a sick relative. Let's see. I think, I mean, yeah, it's frustrating to have to fill in sometimes, but, you can take some, there's that thing about a good deed is its own reward. You're allowing someone to visit a sick relative. Let's see. But yeah, they do agree it can happen just, what was it, a day later than that. But it very effectively shows both how callous the rich are. Like, this guy waits on him, hand and foot, day and night, and he doesn't even get to visit his dying mother. And it also shows Barrett increasing how far he can go and get away with it. And yeah, the jacket has not been properly cleaned, so he has to try to get some of the stuff off, which is not 100. While it's on him, it's not 100% the same as Barrett like caressing Tony's body, but it's not that far off either. At one point, Tony's like, "Come on, do it harder." The movie's not always subtle about the gay stuff, and I don't think that's a problem at all. It is like, I love that like the censors watched this in '63 and were like, nothing gay here. There's nothing in this movie that could give people ideas. Just amazing. Yeah. Let's see. Then we have, yeah. Tony's going for his aftershave, which he ends up not even applying because he's so appalled by what he finds. Turns out Vera is in there, and she's naked. And, she claims she thought it was empty. And this is right after Barrett has pointed out how short her skirts are, which is, of course, also the thing of, like, it was very popular here in the West in the 60s, but also thought of as inappropriate for this kind of position. Yeah. But not necessarily the kind of position that Tony is now picturing her having. And yeah, they do make sure we, the audience, know, yes, it was Barrett who told her to take a bath in, Tony's bathroom. And let's see, and yeah, as soon as she gets the towel on, she makes sure to, shout she's naked first, but then she gets a towel and opens the door enough that he can see some of her. And yeah, his mind is definitely seeing pictures right now. And then Barrett also takes a bath. They use a bunch of the aftershave when, let's see. Right, yeah, and when Barrett is not around, Tony just goes to a restaurant, sits there sadly for a while, doesn't eat anything, as he tells the person working there. That was also a great bit, we don't need to spend a lot of time seeing him, like, not eat. We just, he sits there, he's sad, let's see, I think he's smoking or drinking there, or maybe he does right after he leaves, something like that, just in dialogue. No, he didn't eat anything. He just, that's genuinely sad. Like, just, yeah. And like, in his mind, it's somehow less sad than him just sitting at home. Like, I'm sorry, if I'm gonna be sad and alone, I prefer to do it at home instead of in a really public place where people might, stare and be like, oh, that's kind of pathetic, Does that make me sound paranoid? I'm talking about the movie, yeah. Let's see. I'm saying, I figure during his time sitting there not eating, there were probably people who saw and were like, so he showed up alone, and he's like, was he stood up, or did he just decide to go to a restaurant alone and he's not eating anything? What is he doing? Just, yeah. Let's see. And yeah, on the way back, he lights up a cigarette, clearly looking for comfort. He actually misses Barrett. He gets back, and both he and Vera seem surprised. Of course, like Barrett and Vera agreed that she would go back and seduce Barrett. Says Tony, sorry. And yeah, it is like, he thought that the place would be empty, and like supposedly she didn't realize that he would be coming back. Well, I guess it's possible that she didn't know exactly when he would be coming back. I really do hope they clean that kitchen table, or something along those lines, very, very thoroughly, because otherwise this is very unsanitary. This is twice now. And they again have a conversation about the length of her skirt, and she's like, I mean, she doesn't say the exact words that I'm about to say, but basically she's saying there's nothing wrong with that, like, which is, again, are they talking about the skirt, or are they talking about what he's thinking, seeing her in a short skirt? And she puts her hand on his face. Even before they start, it's clearly on their minds. And then when Barrett does come home, he says, Vera should have done the washing up. And now Tony's the one making excuses for her. And even though Barrett literally just got back, Tony sends him out to buy beer that he then struggles to even drink, just because he wanted a little more time with Vera. And Barrett's sly smile at being sent away is great. Like, that is the face of a man for whom things are working out as he had hoped. And we get another great mirror shot where Tony and Vera are getting amorous. And let's see. Yeah, not long after Stuart and Tony return, let's see, you can tell Barrett and Vera were not expecting them so early. Great bit when we just see Barrett's shadow. He realizes they're home, and Stuart has to prod a bit before Tony does anything. And it's a great moment when Barrett reveals Vera is not his sister and says, now we're in the same boat. And he can tell, what Stuart is wondering, so he answers before she has to ask the question. And, Tony might not tell the truth, so Barrett just says, he knows what I'm talking about. And they're told to leave, and they're incredibly loud on the way out, clearly not acting like people who at all feel remorse for what they were just caught doing. I'm gonna be honest, I did not know people could make that much noise. Well, certainly not British people, at least. And, it's again the thing about upper class versus lower class. And within days, Tony's home is a complete mess. And the two of them meet in a bar. Barrett, knowing that Tony will easily fall for his claim that Vera is evil, the mastermind here, that it's not Barrett. Yeah, bigots, on account of bigotry brain rot, always look for someone they're bigoted towards to blame for something, to blame something on. And with misogynists, it is very much the case. They will frequently hate a woman for what a man has done. We've seen time and again, a woman will be victim blamed for the attack that a man unleashed upon her, especially if that man has some degree of power and or is the same ethnicity as the misogynist, even when there's video where you can clearly see he started attacking her. Like, it wouldn't be okay if she attacks him, like, unless she's, like, extremely strong. And even so, he should still not try to hurt her. He should have just, like, try to stop her from hurting him at most, But yeah, even when you can clearly see, okay, the guy starts attacking the woman, they'll say, well, there's no sound on the video. What did she say? As if there's anything a woman could say that would make it even remotely okay for a man to attack her. And the camera turns from yet another wonderful mirror shot. We also had one when Barrett joins Stuart and Tony. And good detail that both men ask Vera to leave and then proceed even though she doesn't. But in the bar, yeah, the way the camera turns around from the mirror shot, grand. I also find amusing the Irish guy who says, had really rotten luck that day. It'll take days to get over. And he ends up kind of reacting as if Tony did say something. Like, basically, this guy's so used to... so used to people saying something in that kind of situation, he doesn't understand how to behave when he experiences that not happening. Another hint that the movie is gay lies in the multiple photos of half-naked, conventionally attractive, muscular men in the bedroom. I'm sure they're just there to give, the guy something to aspire to. Let's see. Barrett gets another chance, and the power dynamic is shifting in a really big way. A bit with a crossword puzzle. It's really great how, he asks, 5 letters. What will wax and then wane? The answer is power. And that's the theme of the movie. Power waxes and wanes, just wonderfully done. Because Tony doesn't get that, and I don't know if it's possible Barrett just doesn't care, but I think there's a chance he knows the answer, and he doesn't want Tony to realize power waxes and wanes, because he likes Tony thinking that he's the one, he's in charge here. Do you feel in charge? And that brings us to... the bit with the crossword puzzle has Barrett sounding like a stereotypical nagging wife. And I say that only as descriptive. I'm not saying, I am not one of those people who judges women for, why she's, nagging? Because you're not listening, because you're not doing the things that she's asking you to do. The 10th time you're asked something, the person asking might be annoyed at you, and you might be annoyed at being asked. But, a lot of the time, when a woman asks a man for something, it's very reasonable, and a lot of misogynistic men will refuse just because it's a woman asking them for something, because they feel that'll somehow make them weaker. It's not weakness, it's strength. If you care about her, you should want to do things for her. Now, let's see. And they argue over the tea stains. And, Tony's trying to get some power back. And Barrett threatens to leave. Let's see. And then they start playing games together like children, including hide and seek. And before that, throwing a ball against surfaces. And we get one of the most, arguably the most, gay lines in the entire movie when Barrett says, and this is nearly a direct quote, "I don't want to stay in a place where I keep taking balls to the face." Which, fair enough, I think boundaries are crucial. But yeah. I'm sorry, some part of me, if I made a time machine, I might go back to 1963 and explain this to the censors and watch their heads explode Scanner style. Wow, they really didn't get it. That's, yeah. By the way, fantastic lighting and use of shadow during the hide and seek bit where, the sinister lighting on Barrett, and, when we can see the silhouette through the fabric and it's warped by the fabric because he's changing. He's not who he was at the start of the film. At the start, he was always a little boy, but at the start, he's like a boy who feels like he has power. He's playing with his toys, and now he's the one being played with. And he looks like a frightened child during the hide and seek. The I found you, you see his face, he's like, yeah. And let's see. Vera shows up insisting to talk to Tony, with Bear trying to throw her out, fake, obviously. And let's see oh right, yeah, I wanted to mention, yeah, here near the end, Barrett does really start coming across demonic, and again, I'm quoting the film historian. Very sinister lighting. That this was the part where he pointed out this guy is not representing like lower class individuals trying to usurp power from the upper class. Like, yeah, that's what he's trying to do, but he's not a representative. He's demonic. This is not. And I can imagine some rich people might have seen them as like demonic. Certainly if they're on a if they're a passenger on a commercial flight, they might see them as demonic. But yeah, it definitely does reflect that anxiety that the upper class felt around this time as things were changing. There were big things happening politically, but it's not really. It's not supposed to be a literal, this will happen kind of thing. It's, yeah. Let's see. Then we have. Right, demonic, the sinister lighting, also the way he talks, the way he laughs at Tony's threats. Another subtle gay bit is when they're eating together and they start talking about how it's like they're old friends, and the last time they felt that way was in the army, which many a gay man can recognize themselves in. And to be clear, I'm not guessing here. This is what I've heard gay men say. Via YouTube. I think that right. So yeah, Vera, shows up, asks for money, not mentioning what supposedly happened to the other money that Barrett claimed she stole from, him. And yeah, Barrett pretends to throw her out, though they clearly have a conversation or an amorous moment, something right outside the front door, and you can very clearly tell from body language, once Tony can't see them, that Barrett and Vera talked about this. They didn't have a falling out. That was just something he said, and of course it's the stereotype, and that's not purely about women, but people who borrow a lot of money or steal, and then suddenly they show up and they don't mention or they have some excuse or something for what happened to the money or something. Oh right, I might as well take care of that. There we go. Yes, so. There we go. That brings. Yeah. And after Tony has already said he stopped drinking, Barrett keeps insisting that he drink some of the liquid that he brought, which I'm not an expert on stuff like that, but it's clearly very potent. It makes him struggle to focus after not ingesting very much of it. And for the rest of the film, yeah, I mean. Yeah, it was potent, and there's maybe he keeps ingesting more, but yeah, it's really doing a number on him, and he still doesn't like. I'm sorry, if I found myself in that situation, I'd be like, you poisoned me, especially once Miss Stewart shows up, because like, if you tell her Barrett poisoned me, she's going to help you, like, yeah, she might not be the founder of your fan club right now, but she's going to try to help you in that circumstance. I definitely think, based on her characterization in the movie. Now, but yeah, Miss Stewart shows up talk to Tony, and she's there because of Vera. It's like, you're not just here to talk about Vera, are you? And she doesn't say anything, so yeah, that's why she's there. And it's no, I mean, she knows that he slept with Vera. Why would she? Yeah, let's and that is a thing that I do really appreciate this movie acknowledging, because that is something, for a lot of women, one of the worst things they can imagine their partner doing is cheat on them. And yeah, it's important to depict that. We should take that very seriously. cheating shouldn't happen. Period. I'm a big believer in if you genuinely just cannot help but have sex with someone who's not your partner, have a conversation with them, maybe break up. If that is just, yeah. But yeah, there are a lot of men who will very casually cheat on women and then get mad if the woman cheats on the man, which just, yeah. Hypocrisy is common in bigots. Let's see. And, casually cheating on your partner if you're a man, and a straight man, I mean, yeah, there's some misogyny there. Let's see. I think that pretty well covers that part. Yeah, Vera is at the party as a guest, so clearly Vera and Barrett arranged for Vera to talk to Stuart so that she would, almost crash the party and, yeah, see Tony amorous with that other woman right in front of her. And Barrett has at this point dropped all pretense of, being just the servant. I'm no servant. This refined high-class individual, he offers Stuart a cigarette, blows smoke directly in her face when she stands very close to him. It was also a really great moment of power struggle earlier when Tony actually threatens to use physical violence against Barrett, and Barrett just laughs and says, "Violence will get you nowhere," which, in reality, of course, in most cases, violence is not an actual solution to almost any problem that we face in our lives, despite how much, like in fiction, we see a lot of problems solved with violence. And yeah, right, there's also an earlier scene where Tony insists a man is coming to see him, and Barrett asks, who is this, one of the boys from Brazil? And here near the end, Barrett says they're going to Brazil the next day. Great bit when we get a POV from Tony. He's looking at the party through the glass, which distorts it because his life has been turned upside down by Barrett. And Stuart kisses Barrett as revenge for Tony kissing another woman right in front of her. It's not that she's actually attracted to Barrett, obviously. She can't stand him still. And with all the women laughing at him, Tony does a pouty party foul or two, and then throws everybody out. And Barrett goes along with it, but Vera stays behind, and he does tell one of them, "Come back, tomorrow. Bring John." Stuart is thrown out without Tony putting up any kind of fight. Barrett and Vera have taken over all power in the household by the end of the, yeah. Right, and also, I quite like how the relationship between the two men resembles an old married couple, the way they bicker. And very close to the end, we get the final glorious mirror shot with the woman looking at what's happening, and just laughing. Just, yeah. I don't know if I've been able to do this movie justice. I hope that, at the very least, I said something somewhat interesting, and that, yeah, that it came across how much I love this movie and how amazing it is. Just, yeah. Let's see. I believe that is all that I have to say about it. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure the whole Brazil thing is going to work out for Tony. I think he might be too, wasted by whatever was in the bottle. But I mean, I think he might have been frustrated anyway by all the bureaucracy, going to information You're going to try to just find out something from his friend, and being told this is information retrieval. It's not information dispersal.